Hello, my name is R.L. Stein. You may know me from some of my classic horror novels as The Rock That Ate People, The Flip-Flops, Vengeance, and the 2016 presidential election. Depending on the upload date of this particular video, that joke could age really, really poorly. But today, have I got a spook for you with my good friend, the Cryptkeeper, introduced by the Animates. That's all I've got. Oh man. Well, welcome to the Animates. We watched Tales from the Crypt Keeper for this particularly spooky episode.
Yes, Tales from the Crypt Keeper, based on the live-action series Tales from the Crypt, which also featured the Crypt Keeper, who reprises his role as the Crypt Keeper. Not that he's a real person. The same voice actor reprised the role as the Crypt Keeper for this cartoon series, which is essentially a toned-down version of the live-action horror anthology of the slightly similar name.
Which it's my understanding the live action one was like a big HBO vehicle, like when it was just starting up.
I think so, yes. I think it's quite sort of popular, I think, at the time. It went for quite a while.
Right, it's kind of a staple of TV, and I feel like especially around, I don't know if maybe I'm getting my years confused, but around then spooky TV was really big. Like I picture this like right next to like Buffy and I don't really know what else.
This is the story of Ulrich the Undying, a sideshow performer who found death not only fun, but profitable. In fact, he is dying to put on a show for you.
Well, we watched 2 episodes, but with 3 different stories. The names of which I now cannot remember off the top of my head. But one was about fish, the other one was about a killer car, and the other one was about 2 people stuck in a dream.
Yeah, and you can, and none of them are like terrifying. There's some like good creepy touches in there.
It's not like Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps level horror. It's more sort of wacky monsters and comic book style fun.
The creepiest of the 3 was the first one, which is the fish one, because that one actually has a pretty grim ending.
The fish one is pretty creepy. Did you, I don't know if this was just my observation, but did it look to you like the main characters were based on McLeach and Cody from The Rescuers Down Under?
Just spending a weekend with this psychotic fish-hating uncle. Like, his parents are like, "Oh, you're gonna really send him with his uncle? Just let him do the fishing thing."
With his hatred of fish never explained. I was expecting some sort of like he was in the war and one time, you know, some sort of harrowing style flashback where he got his head stuck in an aquarium or something and the fish tried to kill him.
He was saved by a maid mer, where a mermaid is like top half of a beautiful woman and bottom half of a fish. A maid mer is a horrifying giant fish head with the legs of a woman.
He's hated fish ever since.
Yeah. It's I think like he just like catches fish and then I think the kid's like, "Are we gonna eat him?" And he's like, "Nope," and he kicks the icebox over. For some reason, that's the funniest part of the whole thing for me.
Yeah, he just kicks it over. He's like, "What are we gonna do? You were gonna eat them all?" Nope, same thing we do with all the fish. He just kicks it over and walks back to his house and just leaves them outside. Well, this brings us to the scene in this episode where they go out for dinner and the guy orders a big platter of fish and then he says to the waiter, "Leave the heads on." And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
what?
I want to see the look in their eye as they're grilled.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe that's why. It struck me as such a bizarre line.
Let them go. Give me the CK special platter and leave their heads on.
There's also the bit where they are driving along on the boat and there's all these ducks. And the kid's like, "You're going to hit them." And he's like, "I don't call them sitting ducks for nothing." And he just plows the boat through. When did you take your anger out on the ducks? How many people do you hate, sir?
That was the Nixon move.
Fly the duck.
Try the duck. Wow. I was just last night watching Treehouse of Horror, and I think it's the best. It's my favorite Treehouse of Horror ever, where Homer sells his soul for the donut, and the devil Ned brings up the court of Hellions, and one of them is Nixon. He's just like, "Hey, I did a favor for you."
I give you the jury of the damned. Benedict Arnold, Lizzie Borden, Richard Nixon.
But I'm not dead yet. In fact, I just wrote an article for Redbook.
Hey, listen, I did a favor for you.
Another hilarious. Can I? Is it okay if I bury the lead on what happens to the psychotic fish-hating uncle? Because it's hilarious. He finds a wallet full of money on the dock and is like, it's my lucky day. And it's at the end of a line, which pulls him into the water. And there's sapient fish in the water fishing, and they're like, never fish more than you can. And he gets crammed into like a tin can, like we would put tuna in. And that's his fate.
Don't they call it manning? They're like, come on, son, we're out for a bit of manning. Which I thought was a great show.
Are you gonna catch any more today, Uncle Gil?
No, Carpy. A good manner fish never catches more than he can.
Can?
The other bit in this that really made me laugh, and going back to The Simpsons, is when the kid's asleep in bed, and he has the dream that his uncle comes in, but he's a giant fish, and it just made me think of the Sideshow Bob episode when he's like, "What do you want to pay before you go to bed?" And I just like, expecting like Uncle Randy not Uncle Randy, Uncle Ned. Randy's the kid. Uncle Ned to just come in and be like, "Randy, do you want some fish before you go to bed?"
Randy, I don't mean to alarm you. There may be a fish or school of fish in this house.
I think the animation in this really lends itself well to those sort of surreal moments as well.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like an old serial comic book, like you'd like find in a gas station. That kind of vibe.
Yeah, well, that's what these are based off.
Oh, okay.
But you are correct, sir.
Yeah. Was Cryptkeeper always a fixture of the comics, or was he made for the show?
I could not say, in fact. I wonder what the comics were called. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I feel as though he works a little better in like I think if I opened a comic and there was just some introduction from like a guy, it'd be a little weird. I think he works a little better in a TV format. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like was made for the show and that's really what helped it take off, because he is the face of it.
Yeah. He's a bit more. Have you seen the live action version of the Cryptkeeper?
Yeah, I've seen like clips here and there. He's very, very creepy, of course.
He is. I mean, he's still kind of played for laughs in the live action show, but
right.
Maybe not quite so. He's more sort of wholesome in this series. Like it's just him, just like making himself a sandwich and just inserting a few puns. a relentless amount of puns.
Hello, Bones and Gills. Yes, I want to rent a vehicle. One with scare conditioning. This ought to tip the scales. Perhaps a little screech cobbler. There's something fishy in the basement tonight. It's good for what flails you. You might say I'm waiting with bated breath. Maybe a little dread time story can scare up a good fright's rest. Turn it off!
Everything he says is a pun.
I do like how I always kind of got the impression like Cryptkeeper, he tells spooky stories, but I don't know if he's like a bad guy. He might like take an organ or two, but I think ultimately he appreciates a good story. He probably just wants to hang around. They kind of play that up in this. It's like, yeah, he just wants to tell a story. Don't be afraid of the Cryptkeeper. Be afraid of the Cryptkeeper. Don't be afraid of the Cryptkeeper.
This little drama is about one of life's unexpected pleasures. Dying, that is.
So, speaking of travel and taxis and cars, that's the focus of the second story.
Yes, which I can remember barely anything about.
It's very unremarkable. All I remember is fully expecting the kids to die, because when the guy got canned, I was like, okay, as long as it's like not bloody, it's fair game. And then the kids live in the end. It was like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, I feel like this story has been done countless times before with other, like the amount of possessed car tales that we've had in literature over the years, I think has been pretty high. So this one didn't really stick with me the way the other one did.
Are you insane? This is Hitler's car!
Our third one was, I would say, more interesting, which
This
is
one was cool. Yeah.
this is definitely something more sort of Tales from the Crypt-esque, I think, where it's a guy and a girl who don't appear to know one another. In reality, they do, but they're in a dream. They don't know each other, and they're being menaced by all these different monsters, and they keep going through different locations, and they can't seem to escape this dream. And there's a twist at the end. I guess there's a twist at the end of all of them, but I didn't see the twist at the end of this one coming. It did keep me guessing.
Yeah, what I felt like this one, again, it wasn't like scary, but it had like a mystery, and you were gradually putting together rules to solve like the puzzle. I thought that was like, that's kind of like a good format to put. Like, I was never like, ah! But it was like suspenseful, and it had some really cool art and set pieces.
Yeah, it did. All the monster designs in this are pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed was there's a toy. Would it surprise you to learn there's a toy line for this animated series?
Oh, it actually would, because everybody's in like one episode, I'm under the impression.
Yes, as far as I'm aware. So they did there's like 4 different figures of the Crypt Keeper. I used to have one of the figures where he's in like his classic sort of hooded robe. And I think they did like a butler Crypt Keeper, possibly the Hawaiian shirt Crypt Keeper. There was a few different versions of him. And they did a zombie and a gargoyle who were both in this episode.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
I think they did like a couple of random monsters and a couple of Crypt Keeper variants.
I see. I was going to say there was probably rights disputes stopping them from making a toy of Godan, whose name is a portmanteau of Godzilla and Rodan, and he looks like King Ghidorah.
Yes, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought you might enjoy that.
I got a kick out of Godan. I can see why he didn't get a toy.
Yeah, due to many rights disputes, I'm sure they would have had to.
Oh, yes.
But a lot of monsters are crammed into this. You get zombies, you get gargoyles, you get the big knight guy, the golem, the golem even, Godan. They pack a lot into this episode. It goes by pretty quickly.
Sure. It's kind of meta in a sense because it's like it's the dreams. They're trapped in the dream of their classmate is the twist. It's the teacher and one of his classmates, and he's like flunking out because he reads too many comics and watches too many movies. So you can kind of presume that he's been reading Tales from the Crypt comics in a certain. It's kind of a cautionary tale of watch too much of my cartoon and you'll dream of my cartoon.
Do we have anything more to say around Mr. Purdy's nightmares?
I don't think so. He has as a fellow teacher, he has my full sympathies. So I know what it's like to hear Mr. and my surname 50 times over the course of a day.
Yeah. At least the kid got transferred out of his class at the end, despite his protests that nobody transfers out of his class. Like,
Right.
no one transfers out of my class. And bizarrely, he teaches Latin. Is that a this that's still taught to children?
I can't.
schools?
I've never heard of such a thing. Like, I think that's such a thing of the 90s.
Yeah, maybe they did.
I like to. I work at a private school too, and we don't even teach Latin there. But maybe my kids are just too young.
I mean, his kids were too young.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
Was he
they
at
were
the
probably
wrong
like,
place?
"Oh, my schedule says this is geometry. Sit down. We're doing Latin." That's the real twist. He's like, "You're gonna learn Latin and chant these magic words to summon the demon."
You kids aren't learning any of that useless geometry. When are you going to use that in later life? What we need is Latin. They need to bring back Latin. Put Latin back on what's the name of the thing? It ends in Cubus, The syllabus. I was going to say the
syllabus.
succubus.
The succubus.
No, that's not right.
Yeah, Mr. Purdy gave us a succubus. That's where it has all the class conditions. No, it's a Scottish vampire lady. I don't. Just follows me home.
Mr. Purdy's methods were unconventional, but he got results. Would you like me to end this episode with some trivia?
Ah, lovely. I love that.
It's a new section which I call trivia.
Wonderful. I think we could workshop it a bit. How about, because I'm thinking something that embodies, like, sunglasses and, really brings the kids in. How about Wiley Martin's House of Esoteric Notions and Inklings?
I love it. You have my full support.
There we go. Show the logo. 10 out of 10. Patreon.
I've not got very many now. I've built this up. So, as previously mentioned, the live-action Cryptkeeper, played by John Kassir, came back for this show. John Kassir voiced the character for the entire duration of the cartoon, and said that he found it very strange that the character had been toned down somewhat, and that he didn't feel quite like himself, which I take to mean that maybe his puns were a bit darker in the live action series, perhaps.
Quite possibly.
So this was actually followed up in 1999 by a sequel series called The New Tales from the Cryptkeeper, featuring the return again of John Kassir and a slightly different animation style. And finally,
okay.
a child psychologist apparently had to approve the scripts for this show to make sure they weren't too scary for kids.
Wow. Okay, wasn't that interesting? I do always get really fascinated by that. By the bringing in of child psychologists for this kind of thing, because I appreciate the extra effort, even if it is a little easy to laugh at. Like, just imagining this professional Frasier-esque therapist being like, "No, you cannot implement Godan eating civilians."
Dear God, Frasier, what are you looking at? It appears to be some sort of movie script. Oh, don't worry about that, Niles. It's just the new Tales from the Cryptkeeper animated series.
I never did ask Dad to shell out for HBO to see the live-action series of its origins. Oh, I'm sure it's garbage.
Oh, I say, Frasier, the new Tales from the Cryptkeeper is on TV. Oh, I had no idea Maris was back on the television, Niles.
That is probably what...
Well, that was Tales from the Cryptkeeper. Tommy, would you recommend Tales from the Cryptkeeper? Would you recommend it to the Cryptkeeper if you saw him on the street? Would you recommend it to John Kassir if he walked into your house carrying his Cryptkeeper puppet and he was like, "Tommy, have you taken a look at my puppet of myself? It's frighteningly good."
I'd say, I give this like a soft recommend. Like, I don't know if I'm watching, every episode of this one every day, rest of my life, but I think you can pop it on now and then. I'm sure there's like someone who knows what the real gems of episodes are and which ones you can skip. I'm sure there's like a Kotaku article of the 10 Cryptkeeper episodes that are worth it, and it's got some like celebrity voice that's like some esoteric reference at the time. Ultimately, yeah, it's pretty good, pretty solid. I'm sure there's some stinkers in there, but pretty solid.
I would pretty much say the exact same. Yeah, I do think that the shorter episodes worked a bit better than a full 20-minute one. I think putting those like two in each one was a good idea.
Yeah, you have more excuses to like cut to the Cryptkeeper too in between. Yeah,
and I think he works very well as kind of a framing device. He's a fun character. So, if you see it on TV, which you won't, but if you did, and it was 1994, don't turn it over. It's worth a watch. Well, all that remains to say is, play us out, Cryptkeeper.
The Cryptkeeper's in the house with a groove that's nasty and mean, like the effects of a guillotine. A permanent headache's the end of the mission, for you have entered the Keeper's TerraVision. So everybody just make that dash, a dash to the Cryptkeeper's Monster Bash. So come along with the Keeper's This is the Crypt Jam!